Shalom everybody from the great nation of Israel. This is VFI News, and I've got a news item for you or two. But before that, I just want to say we have come to the end of the fall feast. Yes, the feast of the Lord, which we're all invited to celebrate. But the next major holiday will be Hanukkah at the end of December. Now, greetings to all of you VFI News readers, supporters, and hearers. If anybody's watching out there, it's been a wild week here. Remember that song, Wild Thing? Well, it's been a wild week here in Israel as we have come to the conclusion of the Sukkot holiday and Simchat Torah, while the rest of the world isn't taking any breaks from the normal routine. Boring. For starters, someone leaked classified information about Israel's plans to strike Iran. And then Iran tried to assassinate Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Don't they know better? The leader of Hamas in the Gaza Strip, Yahya Sinwar, he got his end coming to him in the form of an IDF tank shell ending his life last Friday, while acting leader of Hezbollah in Lebanon tucked his tail and ran away from the IDF all the way to Tehran. All that and much more is just ahead on this week's edition of VFI News from Israel. Stay tuned. Friends, before I get to all the news stories I spoke about a moment ago in the introduction, I need to tell you about an urgent problem. I'm talking about Israel's economy, which is already in bad shape and getting worse, and there's every reason it's going to get worse. The successes the IDF is having on the battlefield and the fact that the war with Hezbollah is going a bit better than we had hoped for or expected it to, with not as many rockets landing in strategic places as we thought would happen, with many more casualties, but with all due respect, that's not the whole story. I've covered some of this ground in previous videos, and I apologize to anyone who might be getting tired of hearing about this stuff, but war is like hell, and it's also hellishly expensive. The government is spending astronomical amounts of money to pay for all the weapons, ammunition, fuel, gear, and equipment for the IDF, which they need to fight on in this war. But the government isn't just paying for all the things the IDF needs, it also is paying a lot of money to take care of internally displaced refugees from northern and southern border communities. The residents of the Gaza border communities have been steadily going back and returning to their homes, jobs, schools, etc. as we rebuild the infrastructure in the south and rebuild whatever homes we can. There's a lot to work out. But the people who had to evacuate from the north are still living in hotels in the center of the country. Most of them remain unemployed, and the government has to pay their unemployment benefits, health coverage, and much more. And all this costs money. I know where they can get it. Underneath a hospital where $500 million is being hidden by Hezbollah. The private sector is also under tremendous pressure, particularly the tourism and agricultural sectors. The airports, which are major engines of economic activity in this country, are operating at significantly reduced capacity. Intel, you've heard of them, one of the largest employers in Israel, is undergoing a global contraction, laying off tens of thousands of workers in the United States, Europe, and also here in Israel. Other big high-tech companies are also shedding employees here in Israel, and some large projects that were scheduled to get started soon have been delayed or even canceled due to the situation. Even IKEA is canceling building a store in Ashdod, Israel. But last but certainly not least, the international credit ratings agencies have all cut Israel's rating, which means it'll cost the government more to service existing debt and make it harder to take out new loans. Incoming foreign direct investment can also be expected to slow considerably, and some investments have already been withdrawn. All of this means that the government will be raising taxes and cutting public services. The banks will also be raising interest rates, but they don't provide much service to their customers, so we don't have to worry about losing anything in that regard. Jokes aside, friends, some of Israel's most respected economists are warning that the quality of life in Israel is in decline, and the prospects for things to get better in the near to medium-term future are not good. Good-paying jobs are already somewhat hard to find in Israel, and they might be getting even more scarce. That means just when citizens start finding that they need to pay out more for pretty much everything, they're going to be able to earn less no matter what kind of work they do, assuming they can even find a job. That, friends, is the unavoidable news I have to lead the broadcast with this week. It affects every man, woman, and child in Israel, whether Jewish, Arab, Christian, Muslim, Druze, short, tall, fat, skinny, or whatever other category you think. I wonder which one I fit. Well, anyways, please be in urgent prayer about this issue, and if you can do more than pray, I urge you to visit our website, visionforisrael.com, and click on the Projects tab. There you'll see all the ways we're seeking to be a blessing here in the midst of this crisis Israel is facing. We've placed dozens, no hundreds of bomb safety shelters in communities all over Israel, and we've donated training and equipment to medical first response teams, firefighting crews, and others. We've also provided food and household supplies to thousands of families in financial distress, and that last area of need just seems to keep growing and growing and growing every month. In Modi'in, we have our Millennium Center, which includes a warehouse, which we try to keep a full stock of everything of life's basic necessities and household supplies. Every day we get new supplies in, but every day large quantities of stuff get boxed up and distributed to households all over Israel. The pace of this operation is amazing to behold, and like I said, every month we have to increase the pace because the needs keep increasing. It's a miracle that we've been able to keep up with this as long as we have, and I'm asking you to help keep it going and pray for our volunteers that also help our own staff. Once again, the website is visionforisrael.com and click on the Projects tab. And while you're there, you can sign up for our newsletter and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Share these videos with your friends and help us reach more and more people with the news from Israel. Speaking of the news from Israel, let's get into the news. We'll start with something that happened shortly before we recorded this last week's video. I'm talking about the IDF's chance encounter with 3 Hamas terrorists in southern Gaza city of Rafah. They fired on the 3 terrorists who scattered, all seeking a hiding place in nearby buildings. A firefight ensued in which 1 Israeli soldier was wounded, but in the end, all 3 of the terrorists were neutralized. A few hours later, when the sun was up, the troops went in to investigate and they found the bodies of the 3 terrorists, one of which appeared to be Yahya Sinwar. They did DNA tests to be sure, and that evening, a few hours after we filmed last week's video, the news of Sinwar's death was officially confirmed by the IDF. Now, Prime Minister Netanyahu quickly posted a video in which he said, among other things, that this is an opportunity for what's left of the Hamas leadership to surrender and hand over the remaining Israeli hostages. He even offered those who handed over hostages amnesty, but added that if they didn't take this offer, Israel would continue to wage war on them until they are all just as dead as Sinwar is. And he is where I think he should be, in hell today. Now, if I can make a brief comment, I think that's a perfectly reasonable offer that Netanyahu was making these guys. I wish the United Nothings, the UN, and all the European governments who always claim to be trying to be helpful in this situation also saw it that way. But they seem to think that the most helpful thing they could do at the moment is encourage Hamas to not accept the defeat they've so obviously suffered and instead keep making ludicrously absurd demands before agreeing to the ceasefire that they need much more than Israel does at this point. I know what the families of the IDF soldiers who have to keep fighting Hamas in Gaza think about that, and I'd almost be willing to bet it's not very different what a lot of ordinary civilians in Gaza think about it too. For that matter, there have been reports that large numbers of Hamas members are surrendering right now because they've had enough of this nonsense, and even if their leaders aren't ready to quit yet, these lower-level Hamas terrorists certainly are. Well, I don't know how, what, and where the truth really lies, because it seems like Hamas wants to keep going on and wage war against Israel. They've heard that Sinwar is gone, and they know better than anyone how pointless it is to continue this fight. Maybe we should bring some of these guys to talk to the students at Columbia University and Harvard so these kids would get a clue about the world that they live in the Gaza Strip. It would probably be the most educational thing that's happened at some of these so-called institutions of higher learning in a very long time. In fact, why don't you guys at Columbia and Harvard go and volunteer in the Gaza Strip? Better your actions than your stupid words. Speaking of quitting, a good idea they should do, many Hezbollah terrorist fighters seem to be doing that after the death of Hassan Nasrallah and so many of the other senior leaders of the organization. Not many have surrendered, but those who have told their Israeli interrogators that many of the fighters, especially the younger guys, never really believed in the cause. I don't either. Well, they were just there for the steady psychics and other benefits being a Hezbollah fighter brought to their families. Now that the organization's leadership has been taken out and its finances are under attack because the IDF is bombing all the banks in Lebanon where Hezbollah kept its money, a lot of these guys are taking off their uniforms, changing into civilian clothes, and simply melting into the throngs of refugees trying to leave the country. One last thing I'd like to advise all of you in Lebanon: why don't you send your money to visionforisrael.com and we'll put it to better use than Hezbollah is. Well, I've heard stories from young soldiers I know who are fighting with their IDF reserve units in Lebanon, and these stories are very unofficial, friends, but they came from people I know and trust to be truthful with me. They said that many of the tunnels and bunkers they've entered are empty, having been abandoned by the Hezbollah terrorists who were supposed to be defending them. Others contained a few terrorists here and there, but they were all dead. They were guys in their 30s, apparently. The officers who were supposed to be leading these units, but have split. And it looks like from these things they tried to stop the younger terrorists from running away, and the younger guys killed them for it before grabbing whatever portable wealth they could find and abandoning their posts. To be fair, Hezbollah's Deputy Secretary General Naim Qassem, one of the few surviving members of the Hezbollah leadership team, has given these cowards an example to follow, relocating to Tehran on the orders of his Iranian masters. It's unclear who is in command of what remains of Hezbollah in Lebanon, and as I've said before, that might explain why they're performing so poorly on the battlefield. Now, once again, this is all to the good and is certainly not what we were told to expect from a big war with Hezbollah. It's not over yet, and we mourn our losses. But I have no doubt that the prayers of Bible-believing Christians like you and me are playing a huge role in all of this, so keep it up, team. Now we're more than halfway through the video, and I've got a lot more to tell you about, so I'll just run through some of the other big stories from the past week and give you a little bit of commentary on each one. There's three big stories related to Iran this week. The first was the leaking of some very highly classified U.S. intelligence assessments about Israel's plans for a strike on Iran. The documents appeared in an anonymous post on the Telegram social media platform last week in what is both a tragic metaphor and a sad commentary on the times we live in. But in any case, the documents revealed some of Israel's methods for gathering targeting data and other intelligence on its regional foes, including Iran. It is regarded as a serious breach of national security both in the United States and Israel. But it's only one such breach, and that's the second big story this week. On Monday, the Israel police and Shin Bet announced that 7 Jewish Israeli citizens have been arrested on suspicion of taking money from Iranian agents in exchange for information about IDF bases, strategic infrastructure such as water and electricity nodes, and high-profile citizens. The information included home addresses of important people, photographs of facilities and military bases, and much else that Iran could potentially use to target these sites and individuals. The police said that these 7 Iranian agents, 2 of whom were minors and 1 of whom was AWOL from his IDF unit, knew exactly what the information they were gathering would be used for. But they were doing it for the money, that's what they say. They received hundreds of thousands of shekels for the information they passed to their Iranian handlers. Now remember what I said at the beginning about Israel's dire economic situation? This is one of the things that happens when people get desperate enough. Although there's no excuse for it, they should be punished to the extreme end of the law. The police said in their announcement that it was only one of several such cases they're investigating in which Iran is trying to entice Israelis, both Jewish and Arab, to betray their country. It's a big problem, friends, and once again, I'm asking you to go to our website, visionforisrael.com, and click on the Projects tab so you can see how you can help us, help these people keep their families fed and cared for. It's impossible to overstate the importance of this. Now that brings us to the third big story related to Iran this week, and that's the assassination attempt they made against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu last Saturday. It came in the form of a barrage of rockets and drones fired by Hezbollah, the Iranian proxy in Lebanon, into northern Israel. The rockets were just a cover for the drones, which were precision weapons that are small and very hard for radar to detect. 3 of them flew out over the Mediterranean Sea before heading for the coast of Israel. 2 were shot down and a third was being pursued by an IDF helicopter, but it managed to hit its target, which was the private home of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in the coastal city of Caesarea. The Netanyahus are usually in their private home on Shabbat, but this particular Shabbat they weren't there at the moment the drone hit, so they were not harmed, thank God, and neither was anyone else. But Netanyahu was furious, rightly so, and he was quick to point his finger at blame to Iran, reigniting the issue of an Israeli retaliatory strike on Iran, which had faded a bit as the October 1st Iranian ballistic missile attack on Israel recedes into the past. It's quite extraordinary how fast that happened, really, but that's another commentary on the age we live in. Events are happening so fast these days that even something as momentous as a large ballistic missile attack becomes old news very quickly. 181 ballistic missiles? There's no other country in the world that would stand for such an attack. In any case, as I've said before in a different venue, the leak of the classified documents about Israel's plans to strike Iran and now this assassination attempt both give Israel a little bit more time to plan and launch an attack on Iran. I believe that attack will come sometime after the Sukkot feast, festival of holidays we've been through, that we're currently ending with, as the government would rather not have the disruption of an attack and Iran's likely counterattack while so many tourists are in the country. And that, friends, is the good news I will be ending this week's report with. The Feast of Tabernacles, also known as Sukkot, is one of God's Mo'adim, or appointed times when He tells His people that they are expected to meet with Him. Some of the other appointed times mentioned in the Bible include Yom Kippur and the spring festivals of Passover and Shavuot, also known as Pentecost, and never forget the Feast of Trumpets. Another appointed time is, of course, the weekly Sabbath day, Shabbat. These festivals are not just for Jewish people, they are for everyone who fears and follows the God of Israel, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Because as it's written, and it shall come to pass that everyone who is left of all the nations which came against Jerusalem shall go up from year to year to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, and to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. This is a prophecy about how the world will look like in the millennial kingdom, but as most of you probably know, there are many evangelical Christians from all over the world who got a head start and came up to Jerusalem. Not an insignificant number did come this year too, despite the war and all other hardships. The steadfast support of you Christians out there and all other people, Jewish, Arab, whatever, are giving many Israelis something to smile about, and we badly or firmly need your support here. Don't forget to go to visionforisrael.com. And by the way, this is why Vision for Israel calls our center, the logistics center in the heart of Israel, halfway between Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, the Millennium Center. So visit us also here in Israel. Well, until next week, friends, I'm Barry Siegel, and this has been another edition of VFI News from Israel. I love you. God bless you, and shalom.